Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this advisor growth webinar series. I'm excited to talk to you today about, goal clarity in the process of planning, whether it be financial planning or estate planning, but really just the whole process around absolutely gaining clarity around the goals that your clients are interested in pursuing, the things that are top of mind and right in front of them. And the hard reality around so much of this is the fact that, most of the clients that you're meeting with early on in those initial discussions don't have real clarity around the goals that they should be pursuing or could be pursuing or want to be pursuing. As I always say, good, smart, intelligent people have an idea, but nobody's ever created the space or asked the appropriate questions or listened enough to facilitate real meaning around the things that they want to pursue out of them. And that's what we want to talk about here today is really, how can we better help your clients define the things that are most important to them. So welcome, and we're excited that you're here with us today. We, saw in a recent study that 49% of clients believe that their advisors' recommendations are based upon their personal goals and needs and priorities, right? Less than 50% are saying that this is about our personal goals, our needs, our priorities, which, obviously tells us that more than 50% are feeling as though they're pursuing somebody else's plan, or that advisor is kind of maybe superimposing goals that they believe that the clients ought to be pursuing and things of that nature. Or maybe it's the fact that a lot of times consumers, in the planning process come in and they bring ideas of goals that they've heard from their friends or colleagues or neighbors or whatever it might be. And maybe they feel that they're personally pursuing somebody else's goals. It could be a number of things, but at the end of the day, the planning process goes so much smoother when we help them clarify what matters to them and what's important to them, and then we help them to pursue that. And so I want to show you a really powerful way to be able to do that and do it consistently and in ways that you can replicate those systems from client to client, decision to decision, over and over and over. So, I know that, consumer desires are shifting, expectations are shifting. We've all seen the growth in AI and ChatGPT. I mean, it was one of the highest attended webinars that we actually had so far in 2024. And we've had more and more conversation about it. But when we just think about buying experiences in life, they're becoming more and more personalized. They have been for a number of years now, but they're just becoming more and more personalized. It's eerie in a way, but that has caused this desire in consumers around their finances to want to make sure that they are connected with the things that are important to them. They want personalized experiences. They want to make sure that their advisors know them, and fundamentally know them, but beyond that, know the people and the things that they care about, right? The problem around that is, as I said earlier, is that most people don't have a clear perspective for their future or the future they can have or what's possible. And so trying to gain clarity around goals that they can pursue, if they don't have clarity around a vision, it's a real challenge. But what I want to talk with you about today, specifically in the goal space, but we will talk about vision, values, and those things that are so core to our work here at Legacy. But we'll get into the Geyser model and our framework for those powerful goal-based conversations. But as I'm sure many of you know, that's not where we start. We don't teach you to start. We don't believe you should start like every other advisor out there in the marketplace around trying to define goals and objectives of your clients, because it's what everybody does. And again, if you buy in and believe and have experienced the premise that I said earlier, and the fact that people don't know what they don't know, they don't know what goals they should be pursuing, they don't know what's possible, they're not clear on what it is they really want and what matters to them, then, how do we really just start the journey of the conversation there? We need to back up and we need to create a strong foundation, which will make these goal conversations more compelling and more powerful, right? And, again, oftentimes you find us talking about the brain and things of that nature. But again, here, this is what's super important around this. Again, our study and all the work that we've done in the behavioral sciences, like the family systems, the relationship systems, where we're really trying to understand how the brain impacts decision making in our clients, right? Like when we're in these interactions, and every tool and every script and everything we do and teach and create at Legacy is taking these things into consideration because it matters, right? At the end of the day, we want to put people your clients and prospective clients in the best decisions, in the best place to make decisions where they feel a high degree of connection. And number two, that they feel protected, they feel safe. And so when we talk about a lot of the, industry expertise and knowledge and the industry jargon and things that can come in, when we get into, the aspects of investments and returns or insurances or, any of the other tax related strategies, that is when people lose connection with the conversation in many cases. Sure, there are some sophisticated, very smart, well-studied, people that you run into from time to time. But by and large, people are looking for simplicity. They're looking for things to be stated and said in words and ways that they can totally understand. And most importantly, the brain can connect with. Because if you're saying things and making them feel a certain way that they can't connect with what you're saying, then again, the protection piece kicks in. People shut down, they trust less, they share more, they share less, they trust less, and those create problems. So when we go back to the prior slide around AI and personal experiences and all of these things that people are looking for, the connection part is making people feel safe and talking to them in words that they can understand, and making sure that they clearly understand that you're here to help, you're here to educate, right? You're here to advise. And that's what's really critically important. When we think about the advisor landscape, and again, I've been doing this almost 30 years now, and I've met a lot of great advisors. I really have, and I've met a lot of poor ones as well. But here's what, I've come to understand in this is that there's lots of good advisors out there that are asking great questions, okay? But it's oftentimes where that ends, right? It ends with the asking of great questions. The knowledge, the data that they come to understand through asking those great questions inevitably gets lost in the shuffle when we switch to recommendations, when we turn our eye and we turn the process to solutions and recommendations, and we begin to start solving, right? So there's lots and lots and more advisors, and there's going to continue to be, that are really focused on asking those really important and great questions up front. But that's not where it should end. For each and every one of you, that's not where you should allow it to end. And, you read on here, what we're saying is that exceptional advisors are not only asking those great questions, but they're actually listening to understand what their clients really want and leverage that knowledge and that information to help them make those important decisions in their life, around their family, around their retirement, around their business, around their legacy, around their philanthropy, whatever it is that matters to them is important to them. And so making sure, and what I'm going to show you here today is, what are the structures and ways in which we can help you ask better questions? We have tons of that. It's what we do. But how can we also allow you to document it and capture it so that it lives in the relationship? And again, it becomes that leverage. I don't want you to, we're good people at Legacy. We're not trying to teach advisors how to just sell a pile of more product and gather more assets. It's not what we're about at all. If you know us at all, it's not what we're about. But I use the word leverage in here because at the end of the day, if people don't make the important decisions, right, they're not going to get the results. They're not going to get the vision. They're not going to get the future that they're after. Okay. And that's what I'm talking about. And so if we let these important conversations and these understandings that we gain through this process, if we let that slip away, and it will over a number of additional meetings and discussions, it will slip away and be forgotten. You've now lost that leverage, that importance that will allow you to help guide them into those important decisions with greater ease than you've ever experienced before. Okay. And so let's talk about what that looks like. I said earlier, I'd kind of, today I do want to show you our goal process and how we do that and why it's important and how you can document it, all those things. But I do think it's important to kind of, preach a little bit in the fact that because most people don't have clarity around their goals and struggle with really articulating meaningful goals that they want to pursue, we at Legacy have really taken that values-based approach as a starting point in those conversations to really understand and get clear with them about what it is that they truly value. And if you've heard me say it again, I'll say it again. If you heard me say it before, in our world, the values are the rules and standards that people live by. These are things that are core to people. This represents who we are and what matters to us. And again, the rules and standards we live by. It's critical as a financial advisor to understand those things about your clients because it allows you to advise them so much differently, so much more powerfully. And again, because just like goals, we don't often spend time getting clear on what it is we actually value, as an individual, with our spouses, with our partners, with our business partners, right? We don't spend enough time doing that. That event in and of itself, I could literally tell you hundreds and hundreds of examples of how clients have come back to advisors taking them through that process saying, no, I've never had a conversation like this in my lifetime, and absolutely never with a financial advisor. It's an absolute differentiator. It is a relationship builder. It is a trust builder. It's a growth accelerator in relationship, right? And, over our course of the years and studying and listening to what's happening out there in the world with our advisors and their interactions and deploying these approaches with clients, we've come to recognize as we've started off with mission, vision, values, and goals, and then we migrated it to vision, values, and goals to ultimately arrive on the fact that the starting point for Legacy today and the way we teach is that we start with values, because vision, just like goals, is a very difficult thing for people to really cast powerfully because we don't spend enough time in our lives thinking about it. And so what we've come to recognize is when we start to get clear on people's values, again, their rules and standards and what they care about and what matters, vision starts to unlock itself. It starts to come together and it really starts to show up in a meaningful way about the things they want to pursue. And then in our world, goals in our geyser model, which I'll show you, really becomes the actionable steps. Goals become the actionable steps that we will pursue together, that you and your clients will pursue together to move them closer to that desired vision while honoring and respecting what it is they value along the way. Now, I'm sure many of you could sit there and say, hey, I could have conversations about, the markets and, and asset allocation and different insurance coverages and planning and all of these types of things until the cows come home, right? Like you've got significant amounts of knowledge in that space, but my goodness, like how do I have these conversations around values, right? Like how do I facilitate conversations around their visions and things of that nature? It is not that difficult. And part of what it is we've developed here at Legacy is the tools and the approaches and things to help guide you through that. And the teachings to build your confidence on how to do that, right? So rest assured, the resources and the knowledge is here. We've been doing this a long time, and and we've helped many advisors, and we can help you as well. One of our foundational um, you know uh, approaches is what we call the planning horizon. And as you can see there, separating the strategies, tactics, and tools, and kind of the how of planning and how we can help, and what we need to implement and all of those things, right? Separating that from the values, the visions, the goals, right? The above the horizon. The above the horizon, that is the piece that is oftentimes left off. It is absolutely not engaged in properly at the right amounts. But again, as I said earlier, the point of today is really just that the values and visions inform goals, right? The values and visions allow you to have more impactful, more appropriate, and more compelling goal-based conversations for your clients. Again, the things that you want to pursue together. And again, that's just a given. We see this. And so today, I'm going to talk a little bit about goal clarity. I'm going to talk about an absolute game-changing, like I'm going to tell you all, sorry, that you're foolish if you are not doing goal affirmations with your clients. You're making an absolutely critical mistake in your business, in your process, in your client experience. And then we'll talk about goal achievement, as well, as a part of that process. Okay. So one of the things that we've created, again, is something we call Discovery Insight Workbook. The Discovery Insight Workbook has got our values exercise. It's got, the vision, the questions to facilitate vision. And then it's got what I'll talk to you about next, our whole geyser model for the goals discussion that you want to be having with clients. So it's all in there. And some of you are probably familiar with our Qualitate software, which allows you to take that qualitative data and information and then report on that and create deliverables around that to support your other planning deliverables. Because let's face it, none of the financial planning tools do any justice whatsoever to the qualitative aspects of the relationships with clients. It's a fact. So let's talk about geyser for a bit. And really, geyser is what drives what we call goal clarity. So let's assume that we've done the values with the clients. We've gotten clear on what it is they value, the values that are core to them. We've gotten clear on at least the vision that they have today as they think about their future, that desired future state. And now we're going to begin to start to get into looking at the goals that are going to make that a reality and move them closer to that. So geyser, as you can see here, the G stands for the goals. What is the goal? The I stands for importance. The S is supporting resources. The O is obstacles. And the R is for readiness. Just to give you a sense of this is, when we think about goals, we really like to prioritize, thinking about a Coveyism, if you will. We like to look at prioritizing the top three. I literally, I probably weekly, I see plans coming out of Qualitate, our software, our fintech, where advisors are going to go and present, 10 recommendations, 10 goals. And I'm going to tell you, like, we whittle that down quickly because it can oftentimes, and it just almost always becomes overwhelming. And so we want to prioritize, right? The top three prioritized goals. And then as those start to get addressed and handled, then we move others up in priority, right? Doesn't mean we discard and don't pay attention to all the things that they share with us, but we want to prioritize the things that we can move today that have urgency, right? So that's kind of just an important thing to understand. When we look at the ISER part of this, the importance is critical. The importance is the emotional connection to achieving the goal. And as salespeople, right? Like we're all in sales roles. It's important to understand the emotional connection to decision making, and that comes through importance. And so if somebody states a goal that they want to build a plan that allows them to retire and live successfully through those retirement years, without worry, I'll just use a simple example. Understanding and getting them to express why that is so important to them, right? The words about how's it going to make you feel? Like if we're able to put a plan and a structure in place that's going to allow you to live the way you want to live, do the things you want to do, spend time the way you want to spend time, how's it going to make you feel? Right? I talk about it in my teachings around the head, the heart, and the gut. That's the emotion. That's what we want to strike. So it's not, hey, so how important is it to you? It's help me understand how's it going to make you feel, right? So we want to really get into it and get into the substance because that's the emotional buy-in of why this is so important to them. Supporting resources, I think we get, right? But I look at them as qualitatively and quantitatively. It's not all numbers, right? But obviously numbers are important, but it's also, the fact that a supporting resource can be the fact that we're actually ready. We've never been ready before to pursue a goal like this. And so we're actually ready, and that can be really, really good. Obstacles or anything that can get in the way of this, right? So, what are things that can rock the boat? And when you think about as a planner, right, as an advisor delivering advice, there's a number of things that can get in the way potentially of a client's ability to pursue a job, right? I mean, it could be the economy, it could be loss of job, it could be health circumstances, it could be death, right? It could be a number of things, right? We look at obstacles and then we look at finally readiness. And I love this readiness. I think it's a game changer because we're now live in this conversation. We've prioritized the goals. We're taking each and every one of the goals through this discussion, and we get down to the readiness. And that's on a scale of 1 to 5. How ready and prepared are you to actually take action on this today? 1 means you're ready. 5 means you're not ready, right? Where do you see yourself? And that in and of itself is just, it's a really game-changing conversation because you will find times, and I've had lots of discussions over the years where a client might come back and say they're a 3, where the advisor totally thought that they were a 1, or they might surprise them where the advisor thought that they were maybe going to be a 3, but they're a 1. It's all over the place, but it allows you to have the conversation. If you don't have this conversation around preparedness and readiness, right? And you just leave the meeting understanding, hey, here are the top 3 goals. We've done a good job. We've gotten it narrowed down, and you just move on. The reality is that they're not ready and prepared on all of those things at the level you need them to be. So this is an important conversation. This is an opportunity to advise, to lead, to educate, right? Them in that moment so that, you ultimately leave the meeting with clarity around, hopefully you've got their top 3 prioritized goals as ones, right? I mean, that's ultimately where we want to be. Okay. Bringing them back to why this is so important to them, helping them understand with the resources and any potential obstacles, you can do this. You're going to be okay. So it's just such a different and powerful conversation than the typical advisor is actually having out there in the marketplace, right? So in the Discovery Insight workbook, right, we kind of help you think about how do you facilitate this conversation around the goals. Here are some simple potential, goal categories that you can look to help kind of get your mind going and things of that nature as you want to categorize goals. And then, we list down what the clients, stating as their desired goals and getting them closer to the vision that they have there in the future. And then the next sheet that's in the Discovery Insight workbook is basically just their priority worksheet. So we take each and every one of these and then we prioritize them. What's the number 1? What's the number 2, 3, 4, however many you have. And again, then we're going to really take those top 3 and we're going to take them through, basically the geyser model now. Okay. So you look on here, we're going to take that first number 1 prioritized goal, and we're going to really dig in and talk to them about why is that so important to you, right? We're going to talk about what are all the supporting resources in support of it, what are all the obstacles, anything that they express and that they share, and then we're going to talk about the readiness, okay? Readiness factor on a scale of 1 to 5. So again, in the Discovery Insight workbook, there's a number of these in there, and so you can take as many goals as you want through that process. Again, we recommend that typically is about 3 is the top priority because, again, there's a lot. In most cases, you're never going to get everything done in a given year with a client, right? Sometimes it's going to go for multiple years as far as getting things done and checking the box and getting things implemented. And vision's always going to evolve. It just simply is always going to evolve, which is great because that means you're always going to have ongoing work and be able to bring ongoing value to the clients. Okay. Here's what's important next. And I talked about this in the beginning. And I said, hey, if you're not doing this, you're missing the boat. I don't find any advisors that aren't working with us, that aren't in Legacy's network, that don't think the way we think and haven't been taught by us, are doing goal affirmation. I see advisors all the time sending out meeting notes. I see a certain group of advisors doing discovery letters. But listen, I have read hundreds of these, and really all they are is a regurgitation of everything that was stated. Many times what I find is they're all just a pre-sell, a pre-close, right? Here's everything you said, and here's some things that we need to actually fix and put in place, right? So you're already getting to solving, and that's not at all what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here in the way of goal affirmation is you shared a lot of really important stuff with us, and it's critical at this point in time that we make sure that what you shared with us, we understand it 100% correct, okay? And so we're simply going back and we're asking for affirmation as it relates to their top 3 prioritized goals here. Again, on this one, financial independence, asset allocation, and family legacy. Those are just the 3 examples here. Now, this is just the goals with a description of the goal. There's another report that comes out of Qualitate, which gives you the goal detail. So I should have showed that here because it has the geyser. It has what they said about importance. And I'm a huge fan. If you've had that conversation, you have that intel, you want to put that out in front of them. That's the thing you want them to sign off on. Okay, so this would go out after this discovery meeting where you take them through their again, in our world, their values, their vision, and you've identified the goals and you've done geyser on each and every one of the goals. This would be an email, right? Correspondence back to them with this report, asking them to say, agree or disagree, right, to those statements. And then they can add additional comments, things of that nature. So it's the act of them saying, okay, this is what you think we said. Let's read it. Is this what we said? And then we say agree or disagree. Okay. Now, I guess what's important to kind of note here is that, it's important to understand that when a client comes to have a meeting with you, and again, I think this is something that we overlook all the time. It's easy to, because you're busy, you're running a business, you're busy, you're running around, you're managing people, right? It's like, I think we sometimes don't spend the time to think about meetings that we have with clients or prospective clients. And when we talk about their finances and their life and what they want and what matters to them, all of those things stir thought in people's minds. And, if you're like us, you're meeting with all decision makers. And so you're meeting with couples, you're meeting with business partners. And, when they leave that meeting or when you leave the meeting with them, and if you don't think that conversations happen, and often those conversations can change what you walked away with, feeling you had clarity on the goals, the priorities, the time horizons, the dollar amounts, right? The number of years, you are mistaken. That stuff changes all the time. And you've all witnessed it. You've all experienced it. You have a really good meeting with the client. You get all their information. You think you've got their goals documented. You go back to the business. You get your team, your people. You start building the plan and recommendations. And now you come back to the next meeting to kind of present what you have. And we've all had the conversation where they say, hey, Todd, you know what? We've given a lot of thought about that. And I know we said that we wanted to see if we could retire in 10 years, but we'd really like to do it in 2. Or we know we said we needed 250 grand of after tax, but we've thought about it. We really feel like we need 300, right? Or I really only want to work for 5 more years, not 10. Are we going to be okay? Or we want to sell the business in 3 years and not 5. What does that change? What does that look like? All the hard work that you and your team did just went out the window. You got to go back to the drawing board. You got to make changes because you don't have the right data. So this step in this process not only solves that reality, right? And I know you've all had those meetings. You've all had them. Okay. It solves that reality. But more importantly, if we have really, really good conversations and we create really good connection and clarity and purpose for people about who they are and what they want and what's important to them, right? And then we send it back to them and said, here's what we understand about you. And they come back and they say, agree. And now you come back with your plan and your recommendations that just helps them get that and get connected with that. There's no selling. They've already bought. And that is what our advisors express, right? We have a great conversation. We come back and said, hey, is this, we think we heard you, but is this what you want? Is this what matters? Is this what you said? Yes, it is. Okay, great. Here's how we help you get that. They will not debate that in that moment. This is where the behavioral and the neuropsychology and all of those elements come into the decision-making behaviors of your clients. Spend the appropriate amount of time up front. Your sales process, the implementation time frame dramatically shrinks. Dramatically. I've told clients, advisors, you all, for years, oh, Todd, all these conversations I'm not having. It's going to take me more time. My process is going to be longer. My team's going to kill me. I'll challenge you today. You follow what I'm saying. This process will be faster than your current process all day long. All day long. I've done it. I've seen it. I've tested it. Okay. What if they come back and disagree? What if they come back with disagrees on everything? The first time we implemented this years ago, and let me be clear, I didn't come up with this. I wish I did. I wish it was all me and my brain and my head. We teamed up with some of the best psychologists, sociologists, right? We studied all of these behavioral and relational programs and studies for years. And that's where we came up with this whole process around positive affirmation. Game changer, okay? A game changer. And so I remember the first time I had a really good friend who was a long-term client of Legacy's. He did this and he went out and he sent the affirmation report out. He had like 7 goals on the thing, maybe too many, but whatever. They were really good. It was beautiful. And they came back on the thing to him with a red pen. They marked it all up and they made all these changes and all these things. And he came back to me. He was like, what did you do? He's like, you totally messed up like everything, my whole process. I said, well, let's look at it. What happened? And what we recognized in that moment was they just made changes. It was evidence that conversations happened after the advisor left the meeting and they discussed more things and they changed timeframes and what they wanted. They got more clarity. And when they got more clarity, they got more conviction. As me and the advisor started to look at it, we said, this is gold. They've told you exactly what it is they want. And so now all you have to do is make those changes, send out another affirmation, say, did we have you correct now? Is this right now? Which they came back and said, agree to everything. And when he went to that next meeting, they were like, this was life-changing. We've never experienced anything like this before. And they implemented 100% of all of his recommendations. Just game-changing stuff, and so simple and so easy. And, I mentioned Qualitate earlier, right? Like, this is what we designed it to do, is to help you document these important conversations, because I don't care what financial planning tool you're using, eMoney, Money Guide, Right Capital. I mean, those are the three animals like out there in the planning world, and, Asset Map, and there's tons of others, and there's more coming in, but they're all just focused on the quantitative elements of the relationship. Qualitate allows you to be different. It allows your deliverables to be different. And it brings in the behavioral and the neuropsychology to how you present and provide recommendations to clients. Again, just further evidence of a game changer here. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Michael, I don't know if I see the Q&A and chat and
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, blowing up. Do you want to tell me what's in there? Anything you want me to address?
Yeah, we got two we can get into. So Sarah asked, in a perfect world scenario, is all of this done in one meeting or is it multiple? And if it's the latter, how many would you suggest?
So it's a great question. It depends on really what Sarah is asking. And so when I think about the goals part of this, the geyser, ultimately in what we call the discovery and planning meeting, right? This is really your second meeting. Once you've had your sales approach meeting and the prospects agreed to hire you, right? And now we come back to our next meeting. Typically, our advisor would have done that values exercise maybe ahead of time. And when they come into this meeting, the purpose of this meeting is to finalize values and have a good conversation about it, to start to begin to create a compelling vision for the future, and then to look at the goals that they need to pursue together that are going to make that a reality. And we want to leave the end of that meeting with a prioritized list of those goals. So that all is in one meeting. The affirmation process that I talk about goes out after that meeting, right? And before the next meeting, which is where we should be presenting the plan and recommendations and things of that nature. So hopefully that helps you. That helps you.
Yeah. Then we had one more from Mike Moss. Do you have a list of goals for clients to pick from? If not, who comes up with the goal verbiage?
Yeah. So Mike, we have in our Discovery Insight workbook, it's a great question. We have categories of potential goals, right? Names, goal categories. And one of the things that we talk about is we think it's important for, you as an advisor to actually use your words, the way that you talk about things, maybe the way that you talk about things in your website and other printed materials. And so to categorize the types of goals that you help clients pursue. What I've found over my years in doing this is there's probably, 10 to 15 max types of goals that we help clients to pursue. But here's what's important in what you're saying. The way they articulate the goal and everything about that goal should be in their words. You need to focus it in their words. So you can come up with your goal categories: financial planning, investment management, right? Estate planning, whatever it is, retirement planning. But the description around the goal is best if you can do it in their words and their word phrases and everything else there below. So there's some simple sample categories though in the Discovery Insight workbook that that we help with. So to get you started. Any others, Michael?
Yeah, we had one more from Dave along the same lines. Said, with a new prospect client, how many meetings and what's the time frame do you think that the process takes?
I mean, we always talk about perfect world scenarios, right? And it really depends on the client, the complexity, and things of that nature. But we focus at Legacy on a decision process rather than a number of meetings. And so we call it the 4 decision system. And so we're just, it warrants the necessary number of meetings to facilitate the decisions. And the better you get at it, the fewer meetings I believe you can do it in. So, meeting one is, well, in the 4 decisions are, the first one is people have to agree to meet with you, right? The second decision is people have to agree to hire you, engage you. The third decision is they have to actually commit to their goals, right? We talked about here today. And the fourth decision is they actually have to commit to implement. So we teach this as we have a sales approach meeting to make people a client. We have a discovery and planning meeting to clarify and understand and uncover what's important to them and what their priorities are. And then we have a presentation meeting, which is where we present recommendations and next steps. So ultimately, it can be done in a perfect world scenario in 3 meetings. But again, depends on the client, the complexity of the situation. Sometimes it can take more.
Got one more that came through from Graham Bell. Is it okay to go over the affirmation statement at the end of the first meeting, or is it best to give it to them in time to look it over and think about it again?
Yeah, Graham, awesome question. And I mean, the short answer is you could, but here's the thing. Their mind's racing at the end of that meeting, right? And so you can clarify what you have at the end of that meeting, but I still think it's important to give them space from it, right? It might be the car ride home, or it might be when you leave their home or the business or whatever. There's going to be conversations that ensue. And I think it's really appropriate to give at least 48 hours, right? Before you put that back in front of them, right? I think it's okay before you leave to say, hey, here's what I got, right? Does that all make sense? Do you think I got it properly and all that stuff? Great. But I would still send it out afterwards. Again, give them a window because it's going to be racing around in their head at that point in time and not all clear for them. So like really, really good question though. Any others, Michael? I don't know if that's you commenting in the chat or somebody else putting something in.
We got one more from Jeff. How long would you suggest a meeting be, i.e. max length? Also provide client with an estimation to book in their calendar properly.
Yeah, it's a really good one. So I would say, a typical, first meeting where we're determining right fit and, if we're going to work together and all of that stuff. I mean, typically that's about an hour meeting. I have some of my advisors that, want to do 90 minutes. I don't think you can do it in any less than an hour. I think it's impossible. Even on Zoom, I just don't. The discovery and planning meeting is typically a couple of hour meeting because you're really getting into and understanding the values, clarifying the vision, and getting at the goals. Again, the goal at the end of that is to come out with a prioritized list, right, of their goals. And so that's typically a couple of hours in that meeting. And then, the final meeting is probably, again, another hour, could be an hour and a half, where we're basically just, presenting the recommendations, how we actually help them solve it, and taking next steps on implementation. So yeah, so figure about, an hour, 2 hours, and an hour, and you could add a half hour on the first meeting and the last meeting, potentially, just depending on the client, the situation, the complexity.
Looks like that was it. I'm going to put my calendar link in there. If anyone wants to book a meeting with me and talk it through further, you can go ahead and do that too.
Yeah, thanks for everybody being out here today. This is obviously something that we're super passionate about. Happy to talk with you about it, as Michael said, and help you implement these strategies and approaches into your businesses. So let us know where we can help, and listen, have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you all real soon. Cheers.